Hello everyone, this is Apex, and watching the number one Zaiwu hater in the world.
Did you know Gamer Subs has a quite delicious newer flavour called Pom Pom Punch? It's based on pomegranates. I actually think this is genuinely delicious. It's not just one of those ones where I say it's a new flavour and here it is, try it if you like it, but it's not really my cup of tea. I actually think this is my cup of tea. I think it's really delicious. Speaking of which, Gamer Subs also does tea. They do gamer teas. They have a bunch like turmeric, black tea, etc. Yerba mate. They also have one to help you go to sleep without caffeine in. It's called Sleepy Time with L-theanine, which is a chemical that helps aid sleep. They also have AFK, a special brew that helps you. A bunch of chemicals also aid sleep. So they actually handle it both sides of your day, giving you the energy in the morning, helping you to go to sleep at night. Get 10% off anything at the GameStop store with the code Thorin, Thorin. You know how to spell it. You know where to go. You know how to save 10%. Right, obviously it's the final of, I think at this point in time, it'd be like if we're counting from CS2, there was 19 majors there. This is the second major of CS2. So I guess from CS2 onwards, this is the 21st major. So we're cooking pretty much, not bad, eh? And obviously it's an absolute surprise final. Now look, if at the beginning of the year or halfway through, I mean, there were Hot Take Point made episodes where I said this, I still thought people actually were underrating Spirit as a potential major winner and that they'd be in contention. I obviously didn't know they'd be here, but specifically playing FaZe Clan, because FaZe Clan, outside of the prestige events, has done absolutely sweet fuck all. And so if you don't realise though, they have done it at the prestige events, is what people actually forget. Do you want to know a little piece of trivia right out the gate that will hype you for this final? So, you know the 3 Player of the Year candidates, and you're all doing that thing that I'm not doing. Guess what I do? I watch them play everyone. I consider them against the best teams, but I watch them play all the big tournaments. Then I decide who's the best. So I don't need the last match of the year to tell me who the best was by who goes further. I'm actually using my eyes and my brain. But when you do that, one of the things you all like to do is look at the big events, right? Especially the prestige events. There was 4 this year, right? There's the 2 majors, and then there's Katowice and Cologne. If you actually look at those big 3, get ready for a piece of trivia for you. You know, Rops has had a way worse year than the rest of them. Even Brokey has, even though Brokey was dope in the first half of the year. Rops has maybe cooked more towards the end. Here's what's funny. Rops and Brokey actually have been in more of those prestige finals than any of the 3 Player of the Year candidates. Because obviously they were in the Katowice final, they were in the Copenhagen final, they still made top 6 at Cologne but didn't go to the final, and now they're in the final of this tournament. They've actually had, if you only care about the big tournaments, a better year as a team than any of the Player of the Year candidates. But I'll tell you what, at the same time, if I'm Donk and I win this and I have a major and Katowice, I think I'd rather have that than just be in 3 finals and lose. So let's see if they actually win, because at the end of the day, that sounds good, except if you say, but you lost them all. So I actually think the interesting detail here is there are so many narrative and so many intangible factors you can look at this. So let's just first of all go ahead and do the veto, because there's actually a lot of fun to be had there. Because for people who don't know, you already saw from both teams some actual sneakiness in their vetoes in this last round. Because I think both did feel on some level, especially in the map pool, that they were an underdog and they had to get ahead of it. If you don't know a concept, right? One of the things Roger Federer used to do in tennis was when people would try to hit to his backhand from the left side, which was in theory his weakest shot. He's Roger Federer, so it was still really good. It wasn't the best shot in the world, and he was fabulous elsewhere. What he would do is try to run around it and turn it into a forehand. And that was his best shot, if you don't know, actually the best shot in tennis back in the early 2000s. So what you're actually trying to do, in terms of Spirit, I actually think what they've done is quite clever. I think 2 months ago, their map pool was in tatters. Everything had just gone like horizontal, and they had no vertical depth, as in they weren't godlike on any of them. Even their nuke fell away. Their Mirage was terrible. They couldn't just pick and adjust to, because other teams would beat them on it. So they got in this position where what they did intelligently, this is actually a sign, in my opinion, that Harley, the coach, does his job, is he started to pivot the map pool away by experimenting on things. So actually, you've now seen them. They don't even go directly into that nuke anymore. Now they go back into the Mirage. Actually, as we'll get into, they've even started to do some picks you wouldn't expect. And the reason that is big is because typically this was a team in the first season I thought had to stay within the main 4 maps, and occasionally could play the 5th and the 6th, it depended on the opponent, and usually they need to have lowest fragging so Donk and Shiro could carry anywhere. I actually think the problem with their teams always had, because they've got these 2 teenage rookies is they've got to have comfort. They've got to feel comfortable. So then those players can play the way they would any day. Meanwhile, if you're FaZe Clan, the beauty of FaZe Clan and what makes this a perfect finals matchup is right now, the superstar performances, aside from Robs, are on the side of Spirit. On paper, they're blasting people, except there's a team they're not. But as individuals, they can't be stopped, basically. But you look at FaZe, and what I just said about comfort and the map pool is exactly FaZe's domain. Because this isn't Karrigan at his peak where he has all the maps to play with, and he's just doing it to fuck with you and punish you. He's not punishing ever here because he can't. When he's playing against most opposition, especially G2 and Vati, there's nothing to punish. They are in theory better on all the maps than he is. So instead, what do I always tell you he does when he's the underdog? Now, when he's the big dog, he messes with you so you don't know where he's going. Yeah, that's true. When he's the underdog, he specifically does it even with his pick as well as bans, because now he wants you to waste your time practicing. Now he wants you to waste your time watching games, look for things that aren't even going to be in the game. And so that means actually against teams like G2 and Vitality, he's had to pick in maps that in theory didn't make sense. But in doing so, certainly seems like it's thrown some of these teams off and made them have to rethink things. And I don't know, you can certainly see how firepower can win you a game. But if you want to put someone like Spirit in the corner, this is how you do it. And so that, I think there are some very interesting potentials for the veto. So let's get into it, shall we? If we go to the last time they played, so we don't really care about the previous season. We're just going to do this season. It was obviously quite recently. It was 2-0 for Spirit, but it was very close. Anubis and Mirage. Let's look what the veto was. So this time around, Spirit moved Inferno. By the way, spoiler, they always remove Inferno. FaZe removed Vertigo. They don't always remove Vertigo. Famously, as you've seen in some of these past series, when you play Vertigo and you remove it, like G2, they'll make you remove it, so they get a free ban. So they'll maybe ban the Anubis, obviously against G2, the ban the Mirage. In this particular case, you do have to ban it, I'm afraid, because in theory, Spirit does play the map. They're just not godlike at it. If we just go to here, it's just not one they choose to play, but they will play it if necessary, or play it as a, let me have a look here. Oh, people have picked it into them. There you go. People have picked it into them. But since they've won 2 out of 3, that's why if you're FaZe, in theory, you probably should do that. Unless, this is the point, unless you want to exploit what I just said, which is they don't pick it. So here's the question, and this is a question that in theory, Halley passed part 1 of this test in Copenhagen. People don't give him credit for this. He passed part 1 of the test. What Karrigan did was he floated Vertigo there because it was the 6th best Spirit map. And his logic was, I'm not floating it because it's a scenario where I'm going to make you ban it. You're not going to ban it. You're always going to ban Inferno anyway. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to float it and I'm going to say, you have a choice. Give me a free ban, not my perma, or you can pick a map that's one of your worst maps. And we're both going to have a shit time on it because we don't know it. And we're such rookies, as you saw when it was decided, we're not good on it. Now, what's funny is Halley actually essentially responded correctly. Initially, it was fine. He didn't do the silly punish pick. That would have been an actual nightmare if he'd have done that. Do you know where he failed? He wanted to actually pull out his own trick move. So when FaZe then didn't veto it second rotation and pushed it and played chicken with him and said, I dare you, you have to veto it now or it's going to be the decider. He went, let it be the decider, ladies. And then, of course, his team, which was super inexperienced, even though they did that comeback, still broke. In the key, they look, if you don't realise, not on that map, they look twice as good as FaZe, exactly. 1.5 times better than FaZe. They just were when they played them. But you saw when they played on that map, it was just a dogfight. Everyone was just down in the dirt. No one was good. It was terrible. You actually saw everyone was choking. All it took, essentially, for FaZe to win rounds there was a little bit of clutch play. They weren't even good on that map. No one was good on T-side that map. So the question this time around is, will Karrigan do that again in the final? Because I think Karrigan, believe it or not, knows he's an underdog again. He even said it when he asked for Vitality G2 Spirit. He knows that's the hardest possible. He didn't ask for Mouse. He didn't ask for Mongols in the fight. He asked for Spirit. That's because he's played Spirit. They've beaten him. So I think actually Karrigan is going to do the same thing again. I think Karrigan is going to float Vertigo. And do you know what? I don't believe Spirit is going to pick it. Because personally, if they pick it, I think Halley has actually hinted this veto. He may well win it, by the way, if he picks it. But I'll tell you what. If I had a bunch of 2 inexperienced teenage rookies on my team in their first ever major final, I absolutely would not pick as my map pick a punish pick into the bottom end of my opponent's veto, but also not the best map in mine and never one I've liked or had comfort on. I think that is insane. So if you're Carrigan, by the way, I actually think it's better for them to pick a vertigo you don't play than it is for them to pick a map they're good on. Like they'll probably beat you on Dust 2 Mirage. They can get you on most of the maps, by the way. They've even started to play the Anubis themselves. There's not really anywhere to go for your FaZe, so you almost certainly float it if you're FaZe. Now, I don't think Spirit picks it. I think this time they've learned their lesson, and they should be smart enough to know they're so good on the map pool. It's all about just letting Donk and Shiro get comfortable that I don't think you even let it go to the decider. So essentially, you can force Spirit to second rotation ban this map. So let's consider for a second. FaZe normally bans Vertigo most of the time, except against Vertigo banners themselves, who'll definitely ban it. Or in this particular case, you can just get cheeky with it, can't you? Like you can go against a whole bunch of squads and do that. So I think the interesting part for me is, that is my prediction. Carrigan will actually float Vertigo both times. So what will happen is Spirit will ban Inferno. It's a good ban against FaZe, by the way. By the way, I will just throw this out there. It's not actually the map they have to play. They will pick it if it's available, but they've also played quite a lot of Mirage. They played a decent amount of Dust 2. They've even now worked in the Ancient because obviously they picked it against G2. Last time they picked it was against Fnatic at the RMR. So they themselves have started to pivot their map pool back towards Mirage, Dust 2. Now they're bringing Ancient into the mix, putting the odd Anubis when they need to. It's interesting how they've moved away from Zerg. They're not the nuke team that they were once upon a time, except against Vitality, because that was just to be a surprise pick if you don't know, to make them think, well, they wouldn't pick nuking us. We've always been better than them on that. So then the other angle for me is, if you don't know, that was only something like the 6th time FaZe has even picked Ancient this entire season. And I just told you they did it against G2 now. Before that, it was just Fnatic, Falcons, who else? Sangal, like not good teams, basically. They were just testing it there or picking against bad teams or punish picking there. They weren't doing it because they actually thought they were strong on it. So I actually think in this scenario, good ban against them. But it's not the end of the world, even though that looks like it's the best win rate there. Obviously, we're ignoring these win rates because FaZe right now is not playing the way they played for the last 3 months at the other tournaments. So the most interesting part then becomes the picks, right? Because if you are the guys from Spirit, you have a very varied set of picks. Your main 3 picks are Dust 2 a while ago, but that was at the Blasts, etc. You haven't picked a Dust 2. You picked one. You picked one against TL, but that's because TL had like a 14% win rate on Dust 2. Aside from that, what you've actually moved into yourself is you're picking Ancient. Remember, you picked Ancient against Mouse, against Heroic, against G2 at the RMR. Then you've actually picked Anubis back at Blast a bunch of times against FaZe themselves, G2, Vitality. So the interesting part for me is, where are you going to go for your pick? Because actually, if you go and look at it, in theory, you saw FaZe have always tried to play the Dust 2. They've gotten the Mirage back online. So I'm actually very, very interested. Like, would you dare do an Anubis when both teams, in theory, don't have the crazy sample size on it? It's actually the Spirit pick I think I'm quite interested in after the bans from FaZe. Because I think if I was picking, again, I'm just going to be very, very cynical if I'm Spirit. I'm going to make the game as easy and comfortable for Donk and Shiro as I can. So I want a map where I know they are going to dominate. So I have to say, out of the maps that we pick, I think that pick in that scenario, especially after that ROPS performance against Vitality on Anubis, is I'm not doing the Anubis one. You know what? I might actually do an Ancient pick myself. I think that's a map where both of them can shine. I might just do the Dust 2. I think that probably we are a better team than them on that map. Those are the 2 I think are the obvious ones. Then when you go to FaZe Clan's side, FaZe Clan's main picks, obviously Inferno's going to be gone, are Mirage, Dust 2, Ancient, actually now, because they just picked it and then they've done one nuke and they only did that to be cheeky against Vitality. Would they dare go into nuke? I think it would be a mistake personally. I know they played dope in that G2 game, but also G2 had some atrocious attempts on T-side there. That's like Snax' playbook really is just step 1, Nico go kill. There's no step 2, so when Nico didn't kill and just got fragged, you just fucking bleeding the game out. Now look, Snax did frag himself, but you're the fucking IGL, mate. I've got plenty of people to shoot people in the head. I thought that was a joke, so I don't think you can expect Spirit to be like that. That has always been a comfort map to Spirit, even if this says 40%. So you could do a nuke pick if you're really confident. Okay, I will say I don't know that they'd expect you to do that. With that said, I actually think the better pick is actually potentially the Mirage. Even though they've got the win rate up for Spirit, that was the map that when it was at the end of the last season, and especially the beginning of this season, they were bleeding on that map. And that was the map, if you can remember the first time these 2 teams played in that kind of 8-set final, that was the map that the whole final hinged on. That was the one that went super close. FaZe could have won it, but they didn't, and that's what made it a 3-0 effectively. So I think actually, if you're Spirit, I do think that is a good map. If you're the guys from FaZe, I think that's a great map to pick. And by the way, 3 people actually, who are unbelievable if you think about history on that map. Carrigan calling T-side, probably best mid-rounds ever on that map. Then you have Rain on CT side. I mean, his office is that A site, right? And then the third one is Rops, because this is a map where you can pull off those giga lurks, can't you? You're not going to get Inferno, which is the best map for that. Nuke, it's questionable if you can get in a position where you could do that. This is the dream map for Rops to keep shining on and to keep wrecking everyone. By the way, those first two maps, those are pick'ems. Anyone can win those. Either team can win the final 2-0. Then we go to the second bans, and I actually think here's an interesting detail. As if to show how Spirit have moved away from Nuke being their dominant home map, it's their most banned map, along with Vertigo. Now, what did I just say there? Along with Vertigo. I think logically, they are not going to ban on FaZe's side the Vertigo. So if you are Spirit, you just ban Vertigo here. It doesn't matter because you're going to get a map that you are comfortable on as the decider, especially because you play Anubis now. So crucially, if you ban the Vertigo at that point in time, like bear in mind, I'm imagining that the most banned maps, if you don't know second bans for FaZe, are Anubis, Nuke, and Dust 2. Right? Being as I think you're going to pick the Mirage, and then you're going to be in a scenario where you pick Mirage for FaZe, you have the Dust 2 pick for Spirit. Then at that point in time, I actually think, assuming Vertigo is second banned by Spirit, if I'm the guys from FaZe, now I have a choice, right? Am I really willing to go to an Ancient for that last one? That would be spicy, right? Obviously, you've seen that Spirit themselves are willing to play it now. They're opted into that themselves now. FaZe has been cheeky doing it too. Do I just ban, obviously just a bit, do I ban the Nuke myself? And then it go to one of those, I don't know. Again, if I'm Karrigan, I'm not trying to get the best map for me. I'm trying to make the circumstances as tense as possible so that the pressure is on the other guy. Remember, Karrigan himself was the one who used to suffer from the pressure. One of the things he himself learned, like Astralis' players, is when they were on, they actually understand the core concept of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They always tell you when you're shit. When you're shit and everyone wrecks you, they say when you're the nail, hang in there. Because when you're the hammer, you smash them all. What you do is you keep that thought in your mind. And as you get more skilled, you use the fact that you're getting talented. Now you have that mentality of, I'm going to make it as hard for him as possible. I'm going to crush him. I'm going to constrict him. I'm going to block off all the limited basic skips this guy knows. I'm just going to dominate him and make him feel like shit, like everyone did to me. That's what Karrigan's trying to do. So I think if you are Karrigan, by the way, opt into Anubis or Ancient as the decider. Because you know what? Yeah, Spirit plays it, but they're right up and down on it. It's not the ones they've got crazy volume on. And who knows how those players are going to play on that one. I'd rather be in a scenario where I have Rain pulling out hero plays and Rops winning clutches and Brokey making mad moves at short range. Remember, there's a lot of mid-range to short close range AWPing on the map. Suits his style. By the way, Ancient's obviously one where it's sprawling out. Now you can have all the big Karrigan calls if you're getting entries. I think these are two great maps. Look, on paper, potentially Spirit's the favourite. They should be the favourite, by the way. I agree. If you take away pressure in Intangibles, they are the favourite, especially because of their star players. But the problem is, there is going to be pressure. There are going to be Intangibles. It's not just about star players. It's a major final, and a major final is massively about holding your nerve and playing when you're not uncomfortable. And the difference is, by the way, FaZe players, all of them, just lost a major this year playing the final. They already know how shit it is and how annoying it is to lose. So when you play one like this, when you've just lost one, when you're thinking back, you play with no fear. You go. It's like when you play against G2 and Vitality. You just go, fuck it, just send it. They're better than me anyway. So am I just going to play by the rules and lose to you like narrowly and then go, well done? Or am I just going to say, fuck it, let's just have a swinging haymakers fight in a fucking phone booth. We're not point fighting. There's no defense. We're just brawling now. And that is what I have seen FaZe do. The only time they didn't was on that Nuke game on T side against G2, which is because G2, this is how G2 beat Heroic. Once the fraggers get fragging on CT side, you're just a crosshair mowing people down. So instead of running into Nico's crosshair outside, they just slowed the game right down and just looked for holes in information and just tried to get that one breaking point in the defense and then get into the sights. And you know what? It was just enough to get over the line. So I actually think in general, this could be a banger final, which for me leaves a decider. Like I say, we're going to potentially end up on like an Anubis, an Ancient. By the way, these teams don't often go to that. The most often deciders for FaZe are Nuke and Dust 2. The most often deciders for Spirit, Dust 2 and Nuke. By the way, you could also do that if you're Spirit, which is if FaZe decides not to veto the Nuke, you can just let Nuke be the decider. That's beautiful. That's in theory your best comfort map for the whole year as the insurance policy for third map of a final if you get there. So it's actually, there's a lot of agency in both teams' hands because Karrigan can do the bluff, but it depends if it is called by Halley, and if he overcalls it and he doubles down himself, or in this analogy of poker, that would be like going all in when the guy just did a raise, he might also get himself clapped. So I think that just in the veto alone, there are so many interesting interesting components. And yeah, let's just quickly look at what the veto was last time. So last time around, like I say, FaZe did pick the Spirit, pick the Mirage. Now Spirit themselves picked the Anubis. You could do that here. By the way, you can't look at that vitality want to go. Well, that's what would happen. If it does, then great. We all live in Narnia. It'll be amazing. Rops is the king. I'd love that to be true, but you'd actually expect regression to the mean, wouldn't you? Like I said here, FaZe themselves might just remove the nuke. This is in a normal tournament. Spirit moved the Ancient because they're going to get Dust 2 last. They don't mind a series of Mirage, Anubis, Dust 2. By the way, that's plausible too. If they don't pick the Dust 2, I imagine FaZe might let it go to that as well. I don't think they would opt into the nuke themselves, but I'm not sure on that one. Maybe they would. Maybe they think nuke, they can make it more difficult for Donk. They can isolate him. They can push Shiro off with utility and allowing him to stay behind and play passively. That's what's so interesting. So many of the angles aren't based on numbers. They aren't based on things you've seen in past matches. They're actually based on, hypothetically, what will the mind state of the stars and the in-game leaders and coaches be when they're approaching this final and in this final. That's the key thing. Not just at the beginning, deep in this final. You're deep in a hole, losing, you're down a map, or you're up a map, but then you're playing a map that's tricky. That's the question, and especially that decider. By the way, low key, I just hope we get to the third map. If we can get to a decider, that's when everything Counter-Strike. Look, it can make for a shit game, but it can also make for the greatest games you've ever seen. I actually think that G2 game, as fun as it was, probably would have been more exciting if we could have pushed it further right. I actually just thought there was a lot more that could have happened there. Don't you think that third map would have been hype as fuck? Even just the break would have been incredible, right? The main thing I now want to talk about to end this video is the intangibles of this final, because that's probably the most interesting part for me. Like, it's funny, you know that it is just ZywOo fans and Monacy fans hating on Donk that people actually tried to talk like he failed today. If you don't know, he had one really bad first map. That's what happened, right? The first map that he was bad on, a lot of people didn't even add this detail in, that was the map Pick of Mouse. He was bad on the first map, and they did look like they isolated him. But here's what people don't tell you, because score ratings don't tell you this. If you don't know, on the last 2 maps, he had 36 kills in 37 rounds. Now, if you understand mathematics, that's 0.97, like KPR. That is like prime simple numbers over the last 2 maps, if you don't know. Like, that is unbeatable. This guy's a 17-year-old in his second ever major, and he's doing that on the which would you rather suck on? ZywOo style or map style, or like a last map sometimes? Or would you rather suck on the first map than be a god on the next 2? I think you all know which way that I'd rather be. So that's a very positive sign. It also shows me you can fuck with Donk, especially on your map pick, but I don't think you can necessarily stop him. He has that eco factor, he has that simple fact. You can't really stop them. You can just try and contain them and make them uncomfortable. So crucially for me, Rops has to be the player who's been in the playoffs. Because I know Donk's coming. I know Shiro's going to give me a nice baseline. He might always be as good as he won that semi, but the baseline's always going to be there. He's going to be a better AWP overall than Brokey. It's just his is going to be frags and safe play. Brokey's is going to be aggressive play. By the way, Brokey also had a little glow up in this last game. But it's mainly going to be about Rops. I need a massive Rops performance. I think it's plausible though, especially if FaZe does what I say and throw not just one, throw every wrench into the veto. Because if you throw every wrench into the veto, I think Rops is absolutely cooking mentally right now. Forget his skills and his frags. I think he is tuned into the game, and especially his confidence in himself in those rounds. It reminds me of 2023. Nothing in 2024. 2023 Rops was like this, especially the end of CS2 Rops. Remember how bonkers that player was? He just win a 1v4 for fun in a game just to break your fucking spirit, just to make sure you never could get 4 rounds in a row, so he just win around and steal one for you. I think that player, if you make the maps all shit for everyone and all weird and all the preps thrown out the window and no one has any strats and anti-strats ready and you're coming into timeouts trying to figure I think that's the sort of chaos where one Carrigan exists and loves, and most especially, I think that's what Rops absolutely lives for. When you are thrown off, when you aren't comfortable, when you don't have all the reads and the timings and all the flashes and especially you can't read all the smokes coming in as to what that could be and what that infers, and is that a fake? And by the way, Carrigan, one of the greatest ever at conditioning with fakes and smokes. I think that's where Rops just smiles. I think that's where Rop, and by the way, Bit from Navi, that's where they eat you alive. Because they make so many correct decisions, small decisions, that every time you make a misposition and a fuck up and you go the wrong way and you look the wrong way and you get tricked by it, you get, the worst thing about it is there's nothing worse in Counter-Strike than dying without getting a straight up duel. You don't even get to put your crosshair on the guy's head. He just shoots you in the side of the head at off angle. He rotates behind you. He sneaks through a gap and gets a free kill on one person and starts shooting the other person. He gets a kill on someone who's backing out of a scenario because his teammate can call it and then he's holding the other side of it. That is the nightmare scenario. And by the way, if there's anyone's going to be hurt from that, it's Spirit. Because here's where the biggest factor I'm going to pick now, and you know this, if anyone's watched my streams or my content, you know I do not trash this guy. I never trash Zontix. I thought it was silly that he said earlier in the year he didn't feel pressure because, mate, you are a fucking teenage rookie from Ukraine playing a Russian team. Everyone is hating on you, and you are, mate, Shiro gets enough abuse. You are going to be under so much pressure this year because you are the X Factor. I do think generally, you flip a coin. If it's a massive event, sometimes he doesn't show up, sometimes he does show up. He never has massive fragging numbers. He just wins his clutches, he holds his spots, he gets his basic kills. The problem is this, because you have Donk is so absurdly good on the entry side, on the early part of getting the opening kills. Shiro, if he's in the position to, and he's given, essentially, the game comes to him, he won't force it, game comes to him, he will win clutches, very good clutch player for an alt player. Zontix, though, winning those clutches is what puts you over the top if you're trying to play a team that's also matching you. I'll take the Rop side of that. Donk could frag him out, and this could all be moot. He could just frag his way through the server, it'll be the end of the game. Could even be a 2-0. But I think if you get down and dirty in the mud, I think that's where Rops can win you the final if you're FaZe Clan. So this is one where, normally I would just say go with the favourite. If you notice, I'm picking the teams traditionally I think are the favourite. It's just, I think the Intangibles makes this closer to a 50-50 or a pick'em. It's probably 55-45 to Spirit's side, by the way. But I'm going to say Intangibles actually mean, I don't know that FaZe can play at the same peak they can, but I'm going to pick them to take this final. And not because of regretting the last ones. I told you again, if we could boot those up again, I could see a game where Nico dominates on Nuke. He was amazing against Heroic. I could see a game where Zero just comes alive on, what was it, the second map or whatever, and just carries, and then they just win 2-0. The difference is in this one, I think this one's always destined to go to the type of game Carrigan likes, and this is going to be nothing like the Na'Vi one, because the Na'Vi series wasn't like that, and that was a very different team who played very different style of CS. Also, I'm just going to throw this out there, I want to see adaptations from the coaching side of Spirit throughout this series. That's one of the problems I have with them as a team. I don't think they're terrible at that, but Halley himself is a rookie coach at S tier, isn't he? He's not Neo, who didn't have the same tenure, but he was around the S tier the whole time, wasn't he? He's even been an IGL of top teams that were winning massive tournaments. So difference is I'll trust Neo and Carrigan a little bit more than I'll trust Halley and Chopper, even though, by the way, I actually do rate Halley. I'd actually like to do some sort of content about him in the future. I think he's actually underrated. I think his prep is one of the biggest things that helps Spirit. But you know what? If you prep, well, it'd be an awful shame if someone right in the major final took your prep and threw it in the bin by not picking that map or vetoing it. That's what Carrigan's going to do. So I'm saying, actually, I'm taking FaZe Clan to win this one. Obviously, if you don't know, I will actually be doing a live view of this particular match by myself on my stream, twitch.tv/Thorin. I'll start at 9:30 a.m. Central European time because the match is scheduled to start at 10 a.m. I'll watch all the maps, even if it goes 18 overtimes on map 3. I'll still be there like the rest of you, and we'll see. Does Carrigan win his second major, one in CS2, one in CS2? By the way, at that point, even on resume, you could say he's the GOAT IGL. He'll have won with like all these different types of squads. He's actually had mega success when he had Danish teams. He just didn't win the major. With all these different multinational squads, he put in different players. He keeps winning. I think that alone's a case to be the GOAT of all time. I also think if you're on Donk's side, could you even imagine the discussion we'll be having for 2025 if Donk leaves his first year, not only as number one, I'm going to pick Monty probably. I'm actually going to say, though, I will spend the next few weeks going back and watching games. But if he gets to be number one by other people's rating and wins a major and Katowice his opening year, what's his career going to be like, boys? Like, why wouldn't he think why wouldn't he think he is the GOAT? He's going to be the GOAT. You know what I mean? At that point, remember how many years it took Simple to win a fucking major? It was going to them in 2014. He won one in 2021. How about Zero? Zero was going in 2019. He won one in 2023. Nico, he was going to them from like 2015. He's never won one. The idea Donk wins one right out the gate. By the way, it's plausible. This guy is that good. Also, by the way, I'll just say, if Donk turns up and he decides to win this final and his skills fully are online, I have no say in it. And all the things I've just said, chuck him in the bin. If he can just get 2 and 3Ks out the gate, yeah, you're going to win a lot of fucking games. They even somewhat let him bait and trade a little bit nowadays, so he could even be more dangerous in the mid-round, so I'll be very interested to see it. But hey, you know what? You've never seen anything like Donk, so I've got to see it. I've got to actually see it in the server. So I'm going to tune in tomorrow, 9:30 a.m, to see me do the live view and see if indeed it is Donk winning his first major, or Shiro for that matter. Be interesting for the Cloud9 legacy, wouldn't it? Or will it be Carrigan? Will it be Rops winning a second major? Maybe, by the way, if they win, I think Rops will be the MVP here. Or if Brokey just goes absolutely mental over 3 maps, it's not implausible. They might even give him the MVP, especially if he has all the impact. Because crucially, for me, when Brokey and Rops dominate, It's not about stats and the rating. It's about the impact. Remember, a kill is not uniform. A kill on an exit is still just a kill on the scoreboard and in your stats, but that doesn't win you the round. It's an exit. It doesn't win you the round. It might take a gun away from it, have some incremental value. It's not the same as a straight up kill in a 1v1 or a kill in a 2v1 where then the other guy saves or whatever. That's 3v1 or whatever. That's the sort of scenario that I like. So yeah, I'm taking FaZe to win this one. They say no man is an island. We all need people who've got our back, and supporting me and the content on my channel are the following people: Matt, Pugnatio, Rajcula, The Concept, Animosity, Banediesel, Ben Glass, Jasun, Jensen Goh, Tosh, Thooorin, and you know it, always a special thanks goes up to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Do you want to ask a question for my video AMA? Do you want to take part in one of those lengthy discussions where I talk about whatever topics are on your mind? Do you want teasers, find out who the upcoming guests are, or maybe even to suggest a guest or a topic for my content? If any of those perks or others catch your fancy, well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today, where? In the Patreon link in the description box below.